course. So I actually started making money when I was 12, and I started getting consistent income when I was 12. And it started off as a bet with my dad. There are a lot of physical punishments. So it is absolutely okay, for example, to tell an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old that they're too fat, for the dancing competition, or that they need to go on a diet, or, that they need to hold their hands up. And there are sticks that teachers can use on kids in order to kind of show them that they need to. So you will be surprised to hear that I thought that I wasn't going to go to university. But I told my mom that I will go and live in LA and dance and become a professional dancer once again. My grandma couldn't take it at all. My dad said, we'll see how long you will last. And even now, 4 years later, he's still always asking me, oh, are you still vegetarian? Are you still doing that food thing? That's an interesting question, actually. And I talk about you in my family all the time.
Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, Happy New Year and welcome back to my podcast, Coffee's on Me, David Quan, where I strive to give guests legacy-worthy interviews that listeners can enjoy while cooking, commuting, relaxing or walking their pets. I hope that you and your family have had a wonderful start to 2023 and have much to be excited about going forward. My guest and I are enjoying a hot chocolate after her very long walk from Homerton College in the morning. We are approaching 5,000 podcast downloads, and if you have been enjoying the discussions on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts, please do leave a review and nominate a guest by contacting me via my Linktree, David Quan. A highlight has actually been seeing this podcast on people's Spotify Wraps for 2022. I cannot thank all the guests enough for their courage and insights. Today I have the absolute honour of learning from Lisa Levytska, who I had the pleasure of interviewing for the Cambridge Student Investment Fund a couple of weeks ago. We're both happy that this discussion will be a little more relaxed, at least we hope. Lisa is a second-year international student at Homerton College studying modern and medieval languages, French and German. Growing up in Ukraine, Lisa was born into two native languages, Russian and Ukraine, which inspired her to become proficient at a number of languages, currently fluent in Russian, Ukrainian, English, French and German, and pursuing languages at university. Outside of her university degree, Lisa is particularly interested in sports and financial markets. Having come from a professional dancing background in Latin and ballroom dance with 8 years of experience, she enjoys practicing yoga and dancing in a range of different styles such as hip-hop, commercial and heels. She spends 6 hours a week at the dance studio and likes to work out in the gym practicing fitness outside of the dance classes. Having an interest in economics and financial markets after completing an economics A-level, Lisa enjoys trading in her personal trading account, having self-taught financial markets and trading strategies, and working at Amplify Trading, where she was offered a regional representative position after completing a summer training program at the company and obtaining a Level 6 diploma in applied finance. She has also joined the Cambridge Student Investment Fund CAMSIV last term and has recently landed a consumer retail sector head role. Being a believer in diversification in all areas of life, she ensures her versatility by working as a team lead at Wiser Academy, where she heads a team of 11 Cambridge students and ensures outreach and representation on behalf of the world's biggest brands, including Evercore, KPMG, Fidelity International, L'Oreal, PA Consulting, etc., and holding a tutoring job at various international tutoring companies. Lisa is currently working on pursuing a role in financial services and is planning out her year abroad program ahead of next year. In her free time, she enjoys reading, learning new skills, and travelling while spending time with her family. Lisa, even though we've had a number of very positive exchanges, there's so much more that I want to hear from you. So Happy New Year and welcome to my podcast, Coffee's on Me, David Quan.
Happy New Year and thank you so much for having me.
Lisa, you're clearly quite a creative individual with a range of, different talents, which we will deep dive. But for now, have your sister and you come to terms with your decision to be a vegetarian?
So that was actually a really interesting decision for me, but I think my family took it much less lightly than I did. I decided to become vegetarian 4 years ago because I started doing research into environmental science and the environment in general, and more particularly into the industry, so kind of farming behind the food production and so on. And I really educated myself on the topic, and Netflix was a huge help on that. I watched a lot of documentaries, and I decided that that's just the right decision for me. And it actually took me 2 attempts to become vegetarian properly. I did it once, lasted a month, and then somehow just jumped back into the old routine, and then it took me maybe a year before I revisited the lifestyle change, and it just worked. My family were so dramatic about it though. I think for me what happened was the second time around I just became vegetarian, I announced it to my family, and I never looked back. My family being Eastern European, where the culture of meat kind of in food is very, very traditional, very popular, they couldn't take it lightly. My grandma couldn't take it at all. My dad said, we'll see how long you will last. And even now, 4 years later, he's still always asking me, oh, are you still vegetarian? Are you still doing that food thing? So, my family were much more dramatic about it. My sister told me that they won't be able to take me out anywhere because I'm not going to eat with them and stuff. But I made it kind of my purpose to show that that's not the case. So I go out with my family everywhere. They never really have to make adjustments for me. I find my own food, it's all good. So it worked out.
The 3 advice that you gave about, living as a vegetarian, the challenges, the solutions, the article that you wrote, number 1, don't force your nutrition upon your family and friends. Number 2, cook for your family and friends. And number 3, show them how great vegetarian shopping can be. Just honing on that second one for cook your family and friends. You mentioned there that you always enjoyed cooking for your family, especially your sister when they're in the UK. It's your way of bonding. Have you had a chance over New Year's and Christmas to do so?
So actually, the past 2 years, I've completely lost my ability to cook. Me and my sister, we tried making biscuits, and that was, I think, 2.5 years ago. And we burnt down the kitchen, basically, in my boarding school. So my boarding school told us to be very cautious about what we do in the kitchen. We tried again a couple of weeks later. The same thing happened. We just burnt the entire tray of cookies we were trying to make. I'm not sure what went wrong. Since then, I've not been cooking as such, so it's been a long time since I've been in the kitchen. Nowadays, I tend to replace cooking for my family by ordering them food from Deliveroo and Uber Eats because I just lost my skill set.
So I guess that relates to your number 3 advice, show them how great vegetarian shopping can be.
Yeah.
Have your shopping habits adapted over the few years of being a vegetarian?
Yeah, so they definitely have. I would say, obviously, I like to shop quite a bit in supermarkets and stuff. And me and my siblings, we like to eat quite a lot of Italian food, which isn't as such meat heavy, so it wasn't a difficult transition to make because we like pasta, we like pasta with cheese, ravioli, that sort of stuff. So they realized that actually going shopping with me doesn't mean that we will have to buy different things. We still eat the same stuff that we would together, and I think for them that was an important thing to see. So for my siblings especially, that we can still buy the same sort of food we've always had, and it doesn't really make a difference because it's not like my family or my siblings can cook meat well. So unless we go out to have meat, we won't really have it at home. And I think they needed to just pinpoint that for themselves.
So what would you say are 2 of the biggest influences of becoming a vegetarian on your life?
I would say, first of all, productivity. I would definitely say, and I read it somewhere and I was wondering if that's actually true, and I think I proved it to be true. Your productivity increases because obviously eating vegetables isn't as heavy as eating meat. So what I tend to find with a lot of my family is that they will have a lunch, especially my dad, and then he will go and chill out in his room or go to sleep and have a bit of a siesta, a bit of a Spanish lifestyle. But with myself, I never find myself having to sit down after food. I can get up, go about my day. I won't need to let my food sit. It's fine. And secondly, it's just, I feel obviously being vegetarian is considered healthy in general, I would say. Some people would disagree. So I feel like generally you feel like a healthier person, and that makes you want to do more healthy things like workouts or, I don't know, go for a walk and so on and so forth. So that's just quite a nice illusion as well that you live in once you become a vegetarian. So I'm quite proud of that.
Some of my vegetarian friends found that once they decided to take this lifestyle, they were able to bond with other people in the community who share similar goals and visions. Have you been able to form like new friendships after this decision?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of people who are vegan, they start accepting you a bit more, because obviously there are different sorts of vegans. So once again, some of them, they're quite enforcing in terms of their lifestyle, so they want other people to share it with them, and that's okay. Like, I've met a girl actually last year. She's not from Cambridge, but she's a friend of a friend, and she's a raw vegan, so she only eats raw like fruits and vegetables. So for her, having friends who eat meat, that's just like so difficult. And having a vegetarian friend just, dilutes it a little bit. So obviously me and her, we still live a lifestyle that's not similar in any shape or form, but I think it puts some people at ease knowing that they have other people who will understand the fact that they will have dietary requirements and will kind of be considerate about it. I think a lot of issue comes from a standpoint where people think that if you don't need a dietary requirement, you don't have to have one. And obviously vegetarianism or veganism, it's like a choice, and I think it takes other vegetarians and vegans to actually understand that you've made a decision and you want to stick by it.
I recognise that you obviously recognise that it's not the lifestyle or the choices for everyone, and hence you mentioned you accept different preferences and try not to question them. But how much of you actually really want your friends and your loved ones to be able to live this lifestyle, given the benefits that you have just mentioned?
Actually, I find myself living alone quite a bit, so because of university. So my friends, it's really interesting because I've created such a contrast in my life. I find that a lot of my friends are actually African, and you have a lot of meat in African culture, in African food culture, and they eat meat all the time with me. Obviously, with my family being Eastern European, the same applies. So my dad, I would say some of my siblings, they eat quite a bit of meat and fish. So obviously, with that being said, I found that I just came to terms with the fact that probably no one in my kind of surrounding will have the same like vegetarian lifestyle, and I don't have, thinking about it, I don't have any vegetarian friends or like any vegan friends that I'm actually really close with. And I don't mind at all kind of meat being cooked, because I know that I'm not going to have it, and I'm okay with it. Like I'm so open to people having their own choice of their lifestyle that it doesn't really, I'm not going to hold it against someone if they eat
so
meat.
So since that decision, you've not had meat at all? Not even once? No exception? None of that?
No. So for 4 years now, I haven't had meat.
Wow.
And it's been good. It's good discipline.
Has there been a moment of temptation, like just this one time?
Definitely. So I was at home 2 years ago, and my siblings, they love to like make traditional Ukrainian food, which obviously includes meat. And for me, it's such a throwback to childhood that I was so tempted.
Just this one night.
But I didn't, because I wanted to show discipline to my siblings as well. And they were like, "Are you sure you don't want any?" And I was like, "I'm okay." So the temptation was there, of course.
It reminds me of the quote from Clay Christensen, who the late Clay Christensen, who was a Harvard Business School professor, and he was talking in the context of faith, and he was playing basketball at Oxford, and he was the starting centre, and his team had made the grand final. But the problem was that grand final was on a Sunday, which he usually goes to church. And people try to convince him to, well, it's just one game, right? But then when he reflects on that moment of not deciding to go, and it was a really tough decision, he said that was one of the most defining moments of his life, because it's easier to be 100% disciplined than 99% disciplined.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. And it's great to hear that you, for 4 years, have just kept that promise.
I think it's very similar. I think it's like with New Year resolutions. People set New Year resolutions for about a week or two. They stick with them, and then they're out of the window. So I think being vegetarian was that one thing I did that actually showed me that I can be consistent with something. And yeah, it's great. It's a great feeling.
What else did you learn from taking and implementing that decision for 4 years? About yourself, about other people, human nature, about the world, anything?
I would say that the main thing is that you can be consistent with things if you really want to. And for me, that's quite important because I think I find myself in patterns where, for example, I try to do something and it doesn't stick. So, for example, for years, I think that's been the case with maintaining sports consistency and like being consistent at the gym. So like a lot of people, you tend to get a rush when you go to the gym, and then you lose that adrenaline afterwards, and then you don't see the gym for another year, and then, you know, the cycle repeats. So I think the fact that you can be consistent if you stick to something that you truly believe in, that's a big revelation, and it's something that makes you feel really good about yourself. So I would say that's another thing I've learned, definitely.
That's great. I've always seen you as someone who has a very long-term perspective, and I was trying to find out why, and perhaps I got to a little bit of the answer, but I believe you did some freelance writing, and I believe this was a paragraph that you wrote, which I thought was really nice. Correct me if I'm wrong, but whenever you think about the future, remember to keep an open mind. When I was younger, I used to spend ages thinking about what that could mean. I would sit on the edge of my bed, contemplating, guessing. Back then, I had no one to break it down for me, and no one to turn to, no one to ask. It was just me, alone, in a dark, poverty-stricken room, and him, my best friend, my only friend. We went through life together, side by side, overcoming scarcity, starvation, and failure. Years later, I finally understand it's all about being fearless. How have you been fearless recently?
So when I wrote that piece, the piece that you just read, I wrote it from a creative writing perspective, but I felt like it really resonated not in every word that I put, but in concept as a general. So I feel like it's very difficult to speak on kind of fearlessness or persevering when you come from a privileged kind of standpoint. And I think that in my life I've been really privileged with my parents kind of providing for me and so on and so forth, but I found that creative writing is a way to express yourself while targeting maybe issues that were temporary, that weren't always there. I found that obviously with my family, I've been lucky enough to attend boarding school, and I've been lucky enough to kind of have the parents who provide for me, but with lifestyle in the UK, it has had, I would say, financial impact on my family, especially on my parents, because they've been very consistent with keeping that idea alive that they will do everything for us, even if that's kind of at their own sacrifice. So I feel like what I was describing here is something that my parents have experienced significantly more than us, their kids, because they guarded us from the phenomenon of kind of seeing the consequences of aiming and reaching out and doing better, for their kids. So with fearlessness, I think it comes from a perspective where you just have to go for things, you just have to try things out. I think in my family, going for it has been a bit of a trend in a positive way. So for example, with me and my siblings starting school in the UK, so I started when I was 12, and my youngest at the time sibling was 9, and I think for my parents, it was a really fearless decision to make, to put their kids through boarding school, which is also one of the renowned boarding schools in the country. So obviously it came with a lot of financial burden, which I think for them was something that they really felt as years go by. For me, fearlessness, I think, reflects itself in a different way. It's more of making decisions which I think will make my family proud, or which I think will benefit me and my skill set. So for example, even with all the jobs that I'm doing, so everything that we mentioned at the start in the intro, I think that's fearlessness, going outside of my skill set, learning new skills and kind of applying myself in different industries in different ways, in different positions. I would say that's something that is fearless on my behalf.
Absolutely. And I believe that you kind of launched your creative writing and just overall creative career during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I think, after a couple of years, you seem to be very familiar and very proud of kind of the achievements you've had there. But in another article, you wrote that once you mastered using the professional money-making side of the internet to discover some opportunistic platforms which work best for getting yourself out there, such as Dots, LinkedIn, Underpin, Upwork. How has that process of trying to monetize different things online and perhaps seeking some passive income, can you walk me through some of the considerations that you've had there?
Of course. So I actually started making money when I was 12, and I started getting consistent income when I was 12. And it started off as a bet with my dad because me and my dad were talking about generational differences and kind of financial responsibilities that kids back then took and that kids now are really delaying. So my dad was telling me how he used to work at like a car manufacturing place in Ukraine when he was 12, and then he worked there for many years before he actually, became a businessman, before he developed his own ideas about what he wants to do. And the point of that conversation was that children back in kind of the 90s and 80s, they were making money earlier than current kids because they were hungrier, for money. They were hungrier to support their families. And nowadays he noticed that the kids are much more relaxed with that. They rely on their parents much more, and the parents tend to achieve a lot, and the kids, they're very slow to catch on to that same energy. And we actually had a bet, and I told him that I will be able to start making money at 12 years old, and he said that obviously with kind of legal procedures, the 18 plus requirements for like legal employment and so on, I wouldn't be able to manage it. And we also had a conversation where he said that physical jobs that people used to be able to get back in the day as children are no longer available. So because of kind of like ethical standards and so on. And I told him that, okay, physical jobs are not something I'm interested in, so I'm going to work with my brain. And he said, good luck with that. So I thought at that point, what was I best at? I had my first, obviously, school year at a boarding school in the UK, and I thought that that's maybe a really good potential to monetize because in Ukraine, there's a growing almost trend for education abroad. So it's very glamorized for kids to study in the UK, Switzerland, and America. So those three destinations in Eastern Europe, they're particularly targeted. And obviously, everyone wants to feel security once they go and live abroad. So a lot of parents are ready to pay tutors and kind of students who currently experience the lifestyle that they want for their kids. And I decided that, that's a great potential. I'm going to start tutoring. So I had an Instagram account, which is really small, but I really targeted advertising on my Instagram account. And I put out an post saying that, if you're Ukrainian, if your kids or yourself want to go and study abroad, then reach out to me because I'm already doing that. And I'm done with my first year of education abroad. So I can walk you through it. And there was a lady who actually reached out a month and a half later, so after I posted on my Instagram, and she happened to be from my city, and she happened to not even live as far as I thought she would. She lived like almost on my doorstep, and my parents didn't know anything about the initiative until I called them and I was like, okay, I have a job. I won the bet because I got it. So there you go. Like somebody reached out to me over social media. Obviously from there on, I've tutored quite intensely and I still do. So
just to clarify, you were 12?
Yeah.
And you were tutoring?
Yeah, so I started tutoring English. I've spoken English pretty much since my birth because my parents had a big focus and concentration on, diversifying the languages that me and my family
How old were the
speak.
people you were tutoring?
So the first guy that I tutored, he was my age.
Okay.
And he was aiming to go study in Austria 2 years later. And he was studying English, he was learning English in the school system in Ukraine, which is not really good. Like the school system in Ukraine in terms of foreign languages is definitely underdeveloped. So she said, you know what, you come from a school system in Ukraine and I want someone who has the influence of Ukrainian education, but also now foreign education to teach my son. So I want you to walk him through spoken language, conversations. I want you to do some grammar with him. I want him to understand the fluency that he needs to have. So me and him, we actually ended up working together for over 2 years.
Wow.
Before he went to Austria, and then he went to Austria and now he lives there. And she called me afterwards after he left and she said that, you know what, like he said that school wouldn't have done it for him. So I just continued tutoring after that. So he was my first client And after that, it really took off.
You were 12.
yeah. I thought it was a good start of kind of learning work ethic, you know, and it's quite important.
So at that point in school, by the sounds of it, you must have been quite a mature student, and I'm sure that you got some very great comments from your teachers at the time.
Yeah, I actually think my maturity and my educational performance was better back then than it is now. I truly believe
you're only at Cambridge now, Lisa.
I'm only at Cambridge, but I do think that, you know, year 8 and 9, so the first 2 years of moving into a foreign country and really trying to like overachieve and outperform to show that you belong, to show that this place is a place for you to be. I think those sort of motivations, you know, being new to a place, maybe having a bit of an imposter syndrome, they really push you to like achieve. So I do truly think that while I was not settled in the UK, that was actually great for me to really push myself forward and prove to myself that even though I'm not settled, I will be. So yeah.
Was that mostly a healthy motivation?
I would say yes. I would definitely say so. I think it took itself out and it presented itself in me interacting with my teachers a lot, in me kind of making friends, like building those connections, you know, like human connections. So I had a lot of like British or English speaking friends, and for me that was a great justification that I can go about my day speaking English the entire time, so not like finding Eastern European friends to stick to and like to be very loyal to. Same goes with teachers, so I wasn't scared to talk to my teachers. I wanted to ask them questions and ask them, you know, how does that work in the UK, because I don't know. So I think it definitely presented itself in a very healthy way.
So at 12 you had that transformative conversation with your dad about making money, you know, supporting the next generation, generational differences, expectations, work ethic, etc., etc. At that point, what kind of goals did you have for your life? Because obviously you were then about to go into boarding school, a totally different country, unfamiliar, but on the weight of your shoulders is this expectation that, or at least you placed on yourself, that you will make it in this world and be able to support your family.
Yeah.
What were you aiming for?
I think I was actually maybe coming not from the best motivation, because I just wanted to prove to my family that their decision is right. So I think my initial motivation was showing my family that they are putting their money in the right place, in the right person, you know, that I'm a worthwhile investment.
Yeah.
And I think coming
more than your sister.
Oh, definitely. That one, I have so much competition with my siblings because I always want to be better than my siblings. I think that's me fighting for favoritism in my family. So yeah, I wanted to demonstrate to my dad and my mom that, you know, their decision to like send us abroad and live away from us, because obviously they've stayed in Ukraine the entire time, was the right one. So I think not having my personal plans or maybe future like ambitions and motivations in mind, but more having my parents' interests, that's what drove me through the first, I would say, maybe 2-3 years of my stay in the UK, before I actually discovered, you know, what I want to explore, what I want to do with myself, and so on.
That is so cool. But again, I think you're someone who always shows that initiative to put yourselves out there, and it's something I have also tried to take a lot of pride in. And, you know, my teachers and my school was very much in favour of the idea of, you know, step outside your comfort zone, and especially when you're young, the risk of failing is not very high. So I'm sure that by going out of your way, you would have encountered some kind of disappointment, perhaps rejection, perhaps, you know, lack of response from other people. Was there one or two such disappointments that really perhaps hurt you at the time, but you look back and you go, I'm so glad I still tried?
Yes, yeah. So I think that maybe happened with my GCSEs. I did decently well with my GCSEs, but again, with going to a private school, I think there is a lot of pressure on performance, because obviously private schools, they can benefit quite a bit of the results that they publicize. So I was at the time doing really well in year 9, and when I got to year 10, I found myself getting a bit distracted, and I now can't pinpoint why, but I found that my GCSE years, so year 10 and year 11, were very were very like unfocused and unconcentrated. So meanwhile, I did end up getting decent grades. I think the process of getting to the grades was kind of tough for me. That was probably the first time when I thought, that studying is maybe quite difficult for me, or I'm like underperforming, I'm not putting in enough work. So I was quite disappointed with my year 10 set of GCSE grades, because I did my French GCSE in year 9 and then a set of GCSEs in year 10 and year 11. And year 10 GCSEs, they disappointed myself and my family quite a bit. I think that put some fear in me that I'm very scared or fearful to disappoint them, especially my dad, again in year 11. So I do look back and I think that, maybe having that year in year 10, which was a bit off for me, where I wasn't working as I should have been, was actually a good experience, because it helped me understand that you can always bounce back. I think that's something that a lot of people in Cambridge and Oxford struggle with. They come from a place where they're top of their class at school, and then they come to Cambridge and they realize that they're actually no better than most of the people here. They have an even playing field. But for me, learning that earlier on, and learning that if I want to, I can bounce back. If I want to, I can get better grades. That was a very transformative experience, which I'm really appreciative for.
Your hard work and discipline, I don't question at all. And your journey to Cambridge and preparing for the 2020 admissions round seemed incredibly well earned. In order to make that happen, you mentioned that you committed the entire lockdown period to extracurricular reading, which let you cover over 40 literature pieces in French and German, discover your topics of interest within each subject, and select material to include in your personal statement. And you also spent 6 months mastering admissions tests and interview techniques.
Yes.
I know Cambridge is a very comprehensive system with the interviews, the academic assessments, but seems like you went well above and beyond to prepare for
Yes, so definitely. And once again, I think that was the effect of my school and my parents. So you will be surprised to hear that I thought that I wasn't going to go to university. I actually announced it to my mom, and my dad still doesn't know, so it will be interesting for him.
You thought you weren't going?
Yeah, I thought I wasn't going.
Because you wouldn't be good enough?
Because I wouldn't be good, and because my GCSE grades weren't doing so well, because the first year, year 12 of A-level was actually really difficult for me. I had to drop subjects, pick up subjects halfway through the year. And my dad still doesn't know that I was telling my mom that I wasn't going to go to university. So if he listens to this podcast, it will be an interesting discovery for him. But I told my mom that I will go and live in LA and dance and become a professional dancer once again, and kind of be in the creative industry, and I don't know, maybe perform with some celebrities on stage and so on and so forth. And I was really serious about that decision, and I researched LA studios and lifestyle, because LA has some of the most attractive dance destinations. So I had my life planned out in a completely different direction. But my mom has always, ever since we were born, had this aspiration of her kids going to Oxbridge. I think she wanted her entire kid line, so all of my my siblings, so all the children in the family, to go to Oxbridge. So she was really pushing me to reconsider, to apply to universities, to see what I can do. And I told her that, okay, I will apply to Cambridge. You will see that I'm not going to get in, but I will try. I'm not just going to apply and fail. I will try to get in, but you will see that it will be a waste of time, and then I can fly away to LA and never see you again and dance. And being dramatic as I am, obviously, I decided to take my approach to kind of Cambridge preparation quite seriously. So I did try. I did want my mom to see that, I'm not just there wasting my time. And then Cambridge worked out. So now I'm here. So that happened.
Wow. So it sounds like you were very, very invested in that dance career then.
Yeah.
When did you start, and how, what was your journey like there? I would imagine there was lots and lots of kind of training.
Yes, so I started dancing when I was 4. So I started dancing when I was 4 years old, and I danced very consistently and professionally until I was 12. So there was a lot of training involved. I would say the way people get trained for dance in Eastern Europe is very, very different.
In what way?
There are a lot of physical punishments. So it is absolutely okay, for example, to tell an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old that they are too fat, for the dancing competition, or that they need to go on a diet, or, that they need to hold their hands up. And there are sticks that teachers can use on kids in order to kind of show them that they need to hold their hands up. So it is a very common practice for kind of dance teachers to be very strict, and they do have permission from kids to, like, if needed, to, like, slap a kid or slap their wrist, or maybe even use like a longer stick to, like, slap them on their knees and so on, to make sure that they keep their legs straight and so on. I think in Eastern European culture, this corporal punishment is really, really popular way to go about with kids, because I think Eastern Europeans truly believe that if it's not physical, if it's done through a conversation, then kids are not going to remember. It's like if you remember the pain of achieving something, you will stick to that achievement. And I think that's a big kind of a difference between Eastern European culture of, like, parenting, bringing up kids, training in professional sports, and here. So I think having gone through, like, really physically training for my dance, it taught me a lot of discipline, and it taught me that nothing is that bad. So when you go through an experience, I think it seems like the end of the world. It seems like you're being treated so poorly, but then you come out of it on top, and all of a sudden you're thankful for, the process, and you're thankful for the way people went about it with you. So I was really, really committed to dance, and I was training a lot. I had a partner who was my best friend at the time, and we actually went to the same school, and we danced together for 8 years. And then my parents told me that I'm going to the UK, and being at a boarding school, which was kind of in the middle of nowhere, it was really difficult for me to continue dancing. So I actually dropped out of dance for a couple of years, and I think that was a really difficult period for me, because I almost had dance as my personality trait. And all of a sudden, it's like half of my personality was gone, like half of the hours, that I had during the day, which I used to contribute to dance, I felt like I had nothing to contribute them for. And that was really difficult for me. And I took my time out of dance, and then I realized that, I can't do this. I need to go back into dance. And it took me a very long time to find my new ground. Once I understood that I'm no longer dancing competitively, and I probably never will again. It took me a very long time to, like, retrain, to start training more recreationally, to stop expecting the coaches to, like, correct every mistake I have, to, like, be perfectionist about my dance, to understand that I'm now in a more relaxed kind of atmosphere, because I almost expected the coaches to have something bad to say about my performance all the time, but then they obviously knew that I'm not dancing professionally anymore, and they always used to repeat it to me that, like, don't expect us to, like, beat you up over things, like, that's just not going to happen because you're not dancing professionally. And I couldn't come to terms with it, because that's the way I was almost raised with dance. So I felt like I couldn't go back into dance and not have, like, a really straining experience while I was training. But I only really came to terms with it when I came to Cambridge, because I found an amazing studio here that I now go to. And I think it took a non-Ukrainian and non-Eastern European coach to really change my mindset and really change my ideas about how people train and how people dance, and the fact that you can do it for your soul and not for, like, performance purposes,
There's a lot to unpack there. I think I just want to go back to kind of those corporal punishments and stuff. It would have been extremely difficult, and I understand the general gist of the discipline and the pain, but did you feel like you had a support network then, and did you feel like the coaches were doing it in your best intention, or were you quite lonely and fearful at the time?
I would say that I did feel like there was a support network. First of all, because I was dancing with a partner, I think when you go through an experience with someone who tends to experience the same things in the process, you already know you're not alone. You already know you can relate, and that is very relieving. And I was also dancing at a studio where there were a lot of couples training professionally, so a lot of kind of pairs training professionally, and seeing how they train train, especially seeing like the older dancers and how they train, and the fact that their training is much more strenuous than mine was back in the day. I think, comparatively, it demonstrated that, what, I don't have it all that bad, because there are people who like do it as their jobs, who do it much longer hours, much more kind of performance oriented. So I thought that actually, in terms of support, I think looking at other people and receiving support from people with experience and also the partner actually made it a very, very like good educational experience as well. Yeah.
So that kind of discipline and, having a stick to hit people, I don't necessarily think that would be allowed, say, in the UK or in Australia where I grew up. So having now gone through it and also lived in a culture like this, do you think that, or you've mentioned some of the merits, but can you also see the downsides of it, and what are your overall kind of evaluations of that style of teaching or coaching?
Yeah, so I do think that it is obviously very challenging for the kids to see the difference. So I think once I came here and once I realized that that's not the way people train here and that's actually not allowed, I think in Eastern Europe what's happening right now, they're stepping back from those sort of systems as well, because obviously Eastern Europe is always trying to catch up with the Western world, and I think that applies, in all kind of aspects of life. So I do see changes being made, but I do think that obviously it establishes a certain standard. So when you're brought up in a certain way, especially like in training and sports, it establishes a certain standard that you then really struggle to get away from, even though you understand that maybe that's not the best way to go about it. I think for the kid to be able to change their mind about the way life is lived, or sports is trained, like that's just a huge change to undergo. So I think for me it was very maybe like mentally straining to understand that, like things are different and it's okay. So teaching at a certain standard, especially when it comes to sports, I think is an experience that you later have to navigate yourself out of once you start living in different culture. And I think that is probably the most difficult thing, just not having that expectation and kind of exploring different ways where physical aspects aren't as kind of strongly developed. So obviously I do think that conversations, more training through conversations is obviously applicable to the UK and other cultures, and as an Eastern European, that's something that is difficult to step back from.
So once you moved environments and you mentioned you lost a bit of that personality trait of the professional dance, what filled the space then?
I think other activities that I started doing at school, so kind of putting myself out there more with people and becoming a people's person, that almost filled the gap. I feel like when you train professionally, meanwhile you do make friends with people who are also in dance. It's quite isolating because you have less time for friends maybe at school or friends outside of sports. So I think kind of learning and navigating the space where you become more of a people's person and you're less almost kind of focused on people just in one area, so just like dance people, for example. That was something that really helped me navigate my way at school, so in the boarding school, and also really get out of that mindset of professional dancing. So I was doing a lot of things at my school. I was head girl at my school, so I had the prefect team for a year. Then I was an ambassador, I was in the anti-bullying council, and so on. And I feel like all of that really helped me just, find new ways to express myself that are not through sports.
Tell me more about Queen Ethelburger's Collegiate, obviously a school that means a great deal to you, and you've obviously risen to the top, and your cohort also received the highest number of Oxbridge offers. So tell me more about your cohort, your school culture? What was this like school motto? What were the values that it was trying to instill in its students?
Yes, so Queen Estelle College was definitely a huge part of my life in the UK. So obviously being in the UK for 8 years, I've spent 6 years in school before coming to university, and I've only ever been to that one school. So for me, it's quite an experience. Obviously, living in a boarding school was very interesting. Living without parents is something that I really, really love. I would say that meanwhile, I'm attached to my family in a way where I want to spend time with them, and I want us to kind of be hanging out and be close. Living with them is not something that I can necessarily tolerate. I found a lot of freedom in not being able to live with my family. I think, again, as part of a culture, I had parents, especially my mom, who are very controlling, who want to know about my life, and sometimes you need to take a step back from that, and boarding school allowed me to have my own space that I could navigate. So my cohort was extremely focused on their performance, so I met a lot of people who actually inspired my education, and whose education and progress I think I inspired as well. My two best friends, whom I've been friends with for 8 years, and we started off at school and we immediately became very close. Their name are Cyrus and Matthew, and I have another friend, Parsa, whom I met a couple of years later. They really pushed me to succeed. I would say because I saw how involved in the school lifestyle they are, it really persuaded me to go out of my way and to try things like being part of councils or being part of the prefect team, none of which we have in Ukraine. So in Ukraine, we don't have those clubs or concepts where people come together and they make a school better. That's not really a thing. So that was something really, really new for me to navigate, and I think my friends really helped me with that. I've had a lot of fun being a head girl with my best friend Cyrus, who was head boy at the time, and I think that really was a start of me understanding that community impact is important as well, and you can have that impact kind of outside of charity work, at your school, and you can make things better, and you can listen to students, and you can talk to teachers, and you can bridge gaps kind of on a more micro scale, and that's something that I really appreciated in my learning experience in QE.
Wow, that's so cool. In fact, I relate so much to it. The school I went to, St Peter's College, Adelaide, very much had a similar impact on me in the sense that there were so many opportunities available, and they want students to be well-rounded, and one of the slogans was like, fostering a boy's character is just as, if not more important than developing his intellect. Mm-hmm. So that really kind of set the tone, and we had, community service as a big part, service learning. It was very much about what can you give and how do you recognise kind of the advantages that you have in life, but to help other people who are at the point not as fortunate perhaps. Yeah. And kind of the relationships that you build with your peers and inter-year level, and taking on leadership roles, and as he said, those micro scale, it's transformative, and I think they're some of the most special times of my life, and sounds like that for you as well.
Our school motto was to be the best that I can with the gifts that I have.
Wow.
And I think that was a prompt for people to explore their personalities, to explore different aspects and things that they could be doing that they maybe don't immediately have in mind. Because for me, being a part of a school community wasn't an immediate thing that I had in mind, but it worked out really well. So I think that's maybe that people element within me is a gift that I explored and a gift that I became quite good at. So I can definitely reciprocate that sort of energy that you're transferring with your school as well.
You definitely embody that motto. Have you had a chance to see Sam, Olivia, Sophia, Ahmad, and also Jency at Cambridge? And if so, what do you guys reflect about your school and how that's prepared you for Cambridge?
So actually, Sophia goes to my college. So she goes to Homerton. Surprisingly enough, I really don't see her enough. I almost never see her. The last time I saw her was in our school year reunion in London last month. But that was the first time in this academic year that I saw her, and it wasn't even in Cambridge. I do see Aman a lot. So me and Aman were really, really good friends. And he comes from a completely different background. So he kind of is a UK student, so UK-based student, but comes from a very different kind of socioeconomic background than me. So for us, I feel like even though we went to the same school, he only went to my school in year 12 and 13, so only for sixth form, and I've been there since year 8. So that alone, I think, brought up a lot of differences in the way we approached kind of Cambridge and applying here and studying here right now. So me and him would talk about QE a lot, and obviously for him, the school has had less of an impact than it had for me. But I think we're both quite appreciative for the help and support that our school gave us. Again, with it being a private school, I know a lot of people obviously have kind of concerns and prejudices when it comes to private schools, but with it being a private school, I think they've really created a really strong support network for their students. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't know how to navigate, for example, my applications. And that's something that I think me and Aman can both relate to and can both maybe reciprocate the fact that QE, so my school, was central and fundamental for us being currently in Cambridge.
Let's talk a little bit more about how you have gone about monetizing a number of different things, such as, getting your year-long creative writing contract for the game development for the company, your writing, your modeling as well, which is phenomenal. But how do you actually go about actually monetizing it? And I know that at the end of your article, for example, you kind of, it was set in the context of COVID, but now it's still a challenging time for people who seek such kind of career.
Yeah, so COVID actually was great for me because it really pushed me to find ways to make money because I had nothing better to be doing. Applying for university, yes, but I felt like I needed something else to do alongside. I think my family are very much money oriented. So both of my parents, they've been making money since they were quite young, and my dad, he runs his own business, and my mom used to have a business. So I think that alone establishes a really high kind of earnings and spending standard in the family. And I think that for me, even that wanting to mimic my parents has been a big kind of motivation for me to start working and finding ways to monetize. I actually started my writing as a way of expression after my granddad passed away. It happened very suddenly about 5 years ago, and I really couldn't come to terms with it because of kind of how the last time I saw him was. I really couldn't come to terms with the fact that, we didn't have the closure, because actually when, before my granddad passed away, I was applying for a head girl position at my school, and he was really, really passionate about it, and he was really committed to it. And I told him that, when I come back next term, I will know the outcome of the elections, and I will come and visit you, and I will tell you. And that's something that never happened because he passed away in between the terms. So in between the time I came back to see him when I left him. So I think creative writing was my form of expression. We had a competition at school, so at QE, which was actually called, the theme of which was the Lifeline. So I found that writing, being a part of that competition and participating in it helped me write about my granddad in a creative writing sort of way. So where the school didn't actually know that I was talking about a real situation, but I was. And I found that exploring certain certain relationships or interactions through writing was the best way to go. So when you don't have access to certain people anymore, writing about them in a way where people don't actually know that it's real is very beneficial for me to step away from the impact of it and think about the relationship that I really had, for example, with my granddad. And I decided that I wanted to write creatively and probably monetize it during COVID because I was writing quite a lot. And I thought, why not try to explore it as a career? That's something that I really enjoy. And I started getting contracts which weren't creative writing oriented. I was still writing articles, so like a piece that you read earlier on. I could still have my platform to express myself creatively, but also learning to step back from creative writing and maybe make it very applicable to the world we live in, like advertising, PR, interviews, and so on and so forth. And I think once I captured an element of learning that I was actually getting paid for as well, I thought, this is great. Creative writing, as much as I love it, it doesn't pay And I'm okay with it because I can write creatively for myself while I write in more formal ways for others. And that's exactly what I ended up doing. And that's when I started exploring LinkedIn. That's when I started exploring platforms like The Dots, which is a big platform for creatives of any sort, so actors, writers, script writers, kind of models, and so on and so forth. And being on that platform, being on The Dots, really helped me see what other things I could be doing. So that's how modeling came about. That's how, for example, interviewing came about. I worked as a private writer for an actor. He's a British actor called Paul Chidozi. So he was really great at kind of teaching me to put myself out there and explore creative industry, not just in the writing space. And I think just meeting people along the way who always pushed me to be more and to explore more and to do more, that really helped me with monetizing skills. Because once I tried monetizing writing, everything else that I was doing in the creative industry, my first instinct was, okay, how do I make money off it? So I was learning while on the job. And I thought, when you get paid for something, you have a responsibility to be doing good at it. So for me, getting paid was almost like an inspiration to do better, to learn more, to progress in a skill, because I'm getting paid for it. So the people, they deserve to get their service, while I need to demonstrate that I'm deserving to get my money. And I think once you put money in an equation, it really pushes you to go above and beyond, because you want yourself to be seen. It's like, obviously money is a reward for your work, and you want to do work in the way where people want to offer you more, so more payment in this case. So I found that money is just great for motivating and pushing you to learn more, to not to stop, to interact with people while you're at it as well.
That's amazing. And thank you for sharing about your granddad, and I have no doubt that he would be incredibly proud of not only your appointment as head girl, but also for all the other things that you have subsequently achieved. And the person you are, I think, it's always worthwhile to remember the positive impact we have on other people beyond the kind of the tangible achievements that we have. But building upon this idea of, monetizing and excelling and getting these opportunities, your family told you to create a strong digital characterization of all your skills and they encouraged you to create a huge digital package with all your awards, certificates, achievements from the past. Yeah. And they said to list them out, and describe them in as much detail as possible to include everything, because what you think could be irrelevant may be a selling point to a future employer.
Yeah.
That is such good advice.
I know. My mom has always had a thing for keeping all of the certificates I've ever gotten through primary school and onto kind of going on to like sixth form and stuff. So when it came to creating a LinkedIn, which in Ukraine, LinkedIn isn't really a platform that is used, but when she discovered that it exists and it's used in kind of America, here in the UK, in Europe, she was like, okay, I have all of your certificates. I've been waiting for this one, So she was really passionate about me creating a really strong kind of LinkedIn. And actually, I even got my other sister, who's younger than me, in on it. We were doing it together. It turned into a family activity. And then later, I think it took me maybe a year and a half before I really started using LinkedIn, and before I realized that, some of the things I put there may be necessary, maybe not, but it's important that I did them, so that I have an experience. Once upon a time, I've had an experience in something and I can talk about it. So LinkedIn is great. Digital footprint, definitely great. My mom has always been very cautious with social media and kind of the way people use it. I think she maybe has been disappointed a lot of times in the way I use my social media. I like putting a lot out there. I like making it quite personal. And sometimes she's very cautious about that. But I do think digital footprints are becoming increasingly more important. And things like LinkedIn, those are the places to showcase yourself, and those are the platforms to like speak on your skills and not feel like you're being like a narcissist, So I love LinkedIn. You can just show off and talk about yourself, and you won't feel bad about it, because that's what it's all about. So it's great.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in recording down this now seemingly small accomplishment, but at the time they were significant endeavors. And I think one of the things I hate is when people like tell a year six, like, oh, your math tests don't matter, you're only in year six. Well, actually it does, because when you are in year six, that is the thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if you didn't make that selection team, it doesn't matter. Well, maybe in the grand scheme of life, they will still be fine. But at that moment, that is the only thing that matters, right? And recording, like, my mum and dad also kept all my kind of progress, and even my piano books now had all the annotations, and we never throw away kind of these sheets of paper that could indicate kind of progress and learning.
Yeah.
And it's particularly nice for me occasionally to go back and look at, oh, wow, I remember this, and you remember that entire moment, how it felt, what you heard at the time, what you saw, the people who have helped you. And it just puts kind of your whole journey in context of how much you can develop and how much you can grow through the community that you have. So that's really
I definitely do think that obviously telling the kids that they need to achieve or they need to, set a standard for themselves, it's important. So like you said, like, for example, year 6 math test, obviously, like, in sixth form, you're not even going to remember it. But I think it's important just for the kid to actually feel like what they're doing is like essential, is significant. And that point of where you think, where you have it in your head all the time that I'm doing something and it matters, I'm doing something and it's significant and people are going to talk about it, I think it pushes you to succeed. So I do agree with you, definitely.
And I think one of the main signs of a good educator is someone who can empathize and really understand from the kid's perspective how important things are. It's fascinating. But on that point about developing, learning, education, the other thing that really impresses me about you is how you've gone about kind of exploring the financial industry as a non-finance student, kind of just navigating that entire space, not only the networking, the social side of things, but also the concrete, having your own personal trading account and learning about that.
So that actually came about quite interestingly. I have a whole story as to how I started trading, and I will go for it. Yeah, I did economics in year 12 and 13. Loved it. Actually thought of undertaking economics in university. The reason I didn't is because maths, I was just not having it. So A-level maths wasn't working out for me. So I saw the content element of maths and economics in university, and I thought, if I can't do maths at A-level, university economics isn't going to work. But I still kind of retained that passion for it, and that strive to learn about it and read about it and just be aware of what's going on. And I actually soon realized that economics in university isn't an essential subject to have for example, a career or even for maintaining an interest in financial services, because there is a lot of theory in kind of academic and educational economics. There's a lot of theory that doesn't necessarily apply to the real world. So I found that, for example, exploring economics through what's happening in the world is probably a much more proficient and effective way of staying in touch with reality. And I wasn't considering financial services at all until the end of my first year in university. I've held a trading account since my first year of university, maybe even since the end of year 13. And the way it came about, a guy who used to go to my school, we were really good friends, and he took me to a party with a bunch of people that I didn't know. So the bunch of people were significantly older than me, so at least kind of 4-year difference at the time, but most of them were like in their late 20s and their like early 30s, and that was like an 18-year-old just out of school. So we came to that party and they were talking about trading the entire night. They were drunk, they were drinking, but they were talking about trading. And when I walked into it was like a house party setting. When I walked into that house party, a bunch of kind of drunk, maybe a bit tipsy 30-year-olds were standing in front of a small tiny whiteboard and drawing like candle patterns on it, and like discussing like a pattern they were seeing on the internet, like a trend line. And I was like, wow, that's what they're doing. Like, that's their idea of having fun, like being drunk but talking about this. Like, okay, like that's an interesting way to go about life. I need to know what they're up to. I need to know what's going on. So when I came back home kind of a month after that party, one day I was like, okay, I need to learn what's so fun about this, that they're choosing this instead of actually going to a club. Like, they just prefer to get tipsy and talk about trading instead of going to a club. And I started learning about it, and I started learning about financial markets and how they apply to the real world, which is when I realized that stepping away from economics in academic context is important. And I started learning about trading and trading strategies just on the internet. I used IG Academy. I used eToro Academy quite a bit. So all the trading platforms, or most of them, they actually have academies and learning educational spaces, which are most of the time free. So I started kind of listening to podcasts like Digest and Invest, eToro, which is my trading platform. They have that, and they run that quite a bit. There are so many webinars. There are so many like opportunities on the internet. I love the internet for that. So I just learned. I opened my trading account with money right away, because a lot of people say trade in a like demo account for half a year, then do real trading afterwards if you succeed with your demo account. I thought, you know what, this is not adrenaline driven enough for me. I'll put real money in it right away. So I kind of practiced creating long-term portfolios. So kind of not trading, so just more investing. I then also practiced trading, found it really fun, really wanted to kind of get into it, like day trading especially. I really like the pace. I really like how like intense it is. So I've been doing that for a while now, and every time I have the money that doesn't need to cover my overdraft, I put it into my trading account, and I'm really enjoying that. I think for me, that's how I decided that I want to go into financial services, a career in financial services, because I didn't know that was a thing until the end of my year one. So when I started my personal trading account, I thought, okay, I can be a trader forever, not have a job, just trade from outside my home. And then I realized that you can do it in an institutional setting. And that really interested me, because I was like, wow, okay, like people can do it as a career. Like, how cool is that? You can be employed and do that cool, fun, intense, fast-paced thing that can occasionally give you a heart attack, but like in a fun way, and call it your job. So then you're not saying that, you know what, I'm unemployed, but I'm trading, and that's just what I do for a living. You can actually represent a company, like have a brand name next to your job, and, you know, have something to say for yourself. And I thought exploring the differences between institutional trading and private trading, so like trading of a personal account, is so fun. It must be so fun. And I started exploring that with Amplify. So Amplify really like introduced me to the world of institutional trading and just institutional kind of like banking. So not the banking when you go and you say, oh, I need to withdraw some money and they give you some money. Not the sort of banking that you encounter on a day-to-day scale, which I thought was the only thing that banks do. They just give you money. I realized that there is so much depth to it, and it really interested me. So then I started exploring kind of institutional trading, personal trading, whether they're compatible alongside each other. So I always go to like networking events and I go, okay, so if I work as a trader in your company, can I still hold my personal trading account? Like, what are the laws? What are the regulations around that? Is that a possibility? And it's so funny because a lot of them go, I'm not actually sure about that one. You know, I'll have to double check it. But then it is. You can hold a personal trading account and trade on as a personal trader, like private trader, and work in a company as well. There are certain regulations around kind of which asset classes you can target in your personal trading account, depending on your job and your position at the company. But you can have both. And I'm like, well, if you can have the best of both worlds, that's what I want to do. So now I'm really trying to navigate that space further in a professional kind of environment, in a professional way.
When people think about finance, like the perception, I'm not saying it's the truth, people either think of the extreme, like Wolf of Wall Street, mass parties in Wall Street, that kind of stuff, or The Big Short, you know, those intense moments, or they associate it with being monotonous, tedious, mundane. You're obviously a very creative, high energy person. Do you therefore see finance and in particular trading as a means of expressing that creativity then?
I actually think so, yes. I think through personal trading accounts, that would present an opportunity, especially because obviously with your personal trading account, you get to make decisions as to where you put your money. And I think there is a lot of creativity in that. I think there is a lot of creativity in narrowing down asset classes, in learning about different currencies, so cryptocurrencies and then forex and stocks, and kind of thinking, what are you interested in, where do you want to be? And then when you start reading about kind of asset classes, it almost becomes like a case study, you know. It almost becomes like a thing that you can do for fun and then apply it to real life and then monetize it as well. So for me, trading on a personal account is probably like the phenomenon, you know, the phenomenon of creativity. It allows me to actually, you know, see what I'm interested in, read about like companies, their drama, like how their drama impacts, you know, who can make the money, how I can make the money. Like there is
just
so
a
much,
massive play of the world.
there is so much going on. There is so much going on. Like, you know, especially when they get themselves into some troubles, like when companies get into troubles, either with lawsuits or just with the way they produce, whether they're ethical, whether they're not, like all of that, that's just real life gossip that you can actually make money off. And I'm thinking that's what people do on a day-to-day basis. Like they get to find out about things about other people. So why not find out about things about companies that make such a huge impact in our day-to-day life, and then see if you can benefit of it, if you can profit of it. You know, I think it's fantastic. Institutional trading, I think it's a bit more structured, it's a bit more systematic, but I think there's a lot of discipline in it, and I think there's a lot of work ethic and kind of challenge in that, which is why I appreciate and I have an interest in institutional financial services as well. I've been to an event at Morgan Stanley this year, and I've spoken to this girl who is a trader. So she works at Forex, like on a Forex desk, and she's been telling me about kind of her experiences and how intense and quick and fast paced it is. And I think with me, I'm really scared of getting bored, and I'm really scared of, like, I love routine, but I'm scared of falling into a routine which will slow me down. And I think this sort of job actually gives you ways to make decisions whilst also you're always kept on your toes, and I think it's just amazing.
Wow, that's awesome. A great way of putting the analogy or the metaphor of the mass market like a play to kind of examine, and that's incredible. I mean, you've been a very regular participant of the Cambridge Student Investment Fund, and as you know, one of the core focuses we've had this year is on inclusivity and helping people from a non-traditional finance background to come. And, you know, we've got our boot camp sessions every week. We've got the stock pitches. We try and keep it interactive with the events as well, and hosting the speakers that we've had. How have you found the Student Investment Fund so far?
I'm actually going to be such great promotion for Student Investment Fund. I think it's great. I think it is so great. Coming into this year, I was really scared not to fit in, because I think with finance being an area that's new to me, you have that imposter syndrome that you're going to come to a society where it's going to be all economic students, all students who have done like a spring week, or maybe already have a summer internship, or maybe already have a job, depending on which stage of life they're in. And I think there is that fear that you will come in and you will feel like you don't know anything and you will want to leave. And not once have I experienced that in Cambridge Student Investment Fund. I think the way you're navigating it is just fantastic. Like the bootcamp sessions, I think for me, what that really showed me is that you are aware that there are people who come from a non-finance background. You are aware that there are people who come from a finance background, but they want to learn about things that will be applicable on the job, that will be applicable for the job interviews. And I think that consideration alone for me was really important for staying in and keep showing up. That appreciation for the fact that you know that people don't know anything and it's okay. I think the way you've been navigating it's just amazing. The Sunday meetings, really great with stock pitches. Half of the reason that I joined before I actually found out what Student Fund is all about was the stock pitches, because I thought, for interviews, stock pitches tend to always come up. There's not an interview when they don't. So it's important to know about them, how to come up with them, how to navigate them. But then there's so much more to it, and I think that's amazing.
We've definitely loved having you, and I enjoy seeing you Sunday. I remember that week when I hurt my ankle. It was a nice kind of walk with you, and your energy and bubbliness always radiates and very infectious. We really appreciate having you, and congratulations on being appointed sector head for the consumer retail sector.
I'm really excited about that. I think that will be a challenge, but I'm really excited about that.
It should be fun. Just make sure you get your term card materials soon.
Of course. The recruitment is actually happening over the next 2 days.
Okay.
I've been in touch over email with people, and I really appreciate that. I saw people who applied. And I had a girl who reached out, and she kind of said that I saw that you've been appointed, and like half of the reason why I applied is because like I saw that you were on a team last time, and I was hoping you would stay in, and now you're like a sector head, so I'm like even more excited about it.
Wow.
So we're going through the interview process right now.
That's awesome. Well, best of luck. I'm keen to work closely with you this term. Also, you're a very keen traveller, especially solo travelling. When was your first trip kind of alone? I know you mentioned previously at boarding school how that's given you the space. Now I can imagine that solo travelling also gives you an unparalleled opportunity to kind of explore not only different parts of the world, but how you relate to this wider world.
Yeah, so actually I went traveling by myself for the first time at the end of year 13. I wanted to go traveling to celebrate the fact that I finished school, that I have like a good offer, that I got the grades for it, yay. And I thought, you know what, this summer is probably, I'm so dramatic. I thought this summer is the last summer I'll be able to have the free time and the freedom to do it, because then I'll be in Cambridge, I'll be studying throughout the entire summer, I'm gonna have no time. So I went to Portugal, to Madeira, at the end of year 13. I just kind of announced to my family. I picked up my stuff. I told my dad, okay, bye dad. I'm going to go for 2 weeks to Portugal alone. Don't want to bring you with me. Don't want to bring my siblings with me. I just want to be like by myself on this one. And my dad, he was really skeptical of it. He was like, I bet you're going to meet a boy or something. Like, because he was like, are you meeting up with someone? Are you meeting up with some guy? Because like, why do you want to go alone? And I was like, no, I just want to go alone. And I had a great trip. It was amazing. Like, exploring and navigating a foreign country completely by yourself. I think that really like allows you to like make friends with the locals. It really allows you to like talk to people more, to explore spaces. I think I travel quite a lot with my family, and we are always quite focused on like exploring the space, you know, navigating like the city, the country and so on, and like really seeing what it has on offer. And I think doing that alone just allowed me to like decide what I want to do on a day-to-day basis, decide how much I want to commit to, for example, exploring the city or just like staying in a hotel or going to the beach and whatever. And it was great. So I went again this year to Germany because I got a scholarship at the university there. So I studied economics in Germany for a month, but I went there completely alone. I lived with a bunch of university people who were like very old. Can you imagine that in Germany they can like postpone their education until God knows how long? Like all of the people that I lived with, they were still in university doing their bachelor's degree, but they were like 28. Yeah. And they started university at a normal age, but then they were like in and out of it so much that now they're 28 and they still haven't finished their degree. So I did quite a bit of that this summer, kind of being alone, but in a more educational environment. And next summer I'm hoping to maybe do both. We'll see. I don't know. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Lisa, we've covered a very broad range of different topics, and obviously this is intended to be a legacy-worthy interview to capture a snapshot of who you are at this point in time, and obviously views will change, and hopefully this will be a piece of recording that you can look back on in 10, 20 years' time. But is there anything else that you would like to be included in this piece of recording, or else I've got a couple final questions?
Let's think. I think you can go for a couple final questions, and if anything comes up, I'll add to it. Yeah.
Well, second or third to last, depending on your response. But who were or are your role models?
I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but I think my parents. I never show like gratitude as such to my parents. I think to my dad, yes, maybe not to my mom, because she's around so much that I think I'm much more used to her presence, so I'm much less feel the pressure or the need to like thank her for things. But I do think that my parents shaped me a lot as an individual, and I think the fact that they have expectations that I can't possibly reach always pushes me to do more. I think my parents have really unrealistic expectations, especially my mom, but I think that pushes me to like go above and beyond and explore things and just do things. So I think my parents probably.
Well, second to last now, is there like a fact or a truth that you really deeply believe but not many other people perhaps agree?
Oh, that one is an interesting one. Yes, actually, I do think, and this is probably very debatable, but I do think that kind of the concept of overworking doesn't exist when you're passionate about what you do. Because for me, what I've discovered, and for me, that's something that I'm okay with, is that, people say that you either live to work or you work to live, and there should be like a balance between the two. I think I kind of live to work. I really enjoy what I do. All the jobs that I pick up along the way, all the positions that I hold, they're becoming more long-term, and I'm okay with that. And I really enjoy working, and I really enjoy kind of thinking about what I can do better so that I perform better at my jobs. So to an extent, I live to work, and I find kind of a lot of joy in that. I think my work ethic is really great these days, and that alone just like gives me a lot of pleasure to just exist.
Just a small follow-up to that. What do you kind of see as the role of like money in your life in the long term? Like, are you trying to maximize your earning? Are you trying to just be able to sustain the lifestyle that you want? Like, how do you actually interpret the role of money in your life?
That's actually a fantastic question. I can tell you that for me, money is probably really important. These past couple of years, I think especially now with what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, my siblings, 2 of them, have kind of become heavily financially dependent on me. So nowadays, I work a lot to continue to financially support my siblings. So I have a sibling who is 1 year younger than me and 2 years younger than me, and they eat into my bank account quite a bit. So for now, I would like to make more money to maintain my own lifestyle and create a lifestyle for themselves that they see fit. In the future, though, I do think that I would like to maximize money, the amount of money I'm making, because I see a lot of power in kind of being able to buy things that you want, being able to live without a limitation. And that's something that I really enjoy, like nowadays, this year I have a resolution to like get my nails done every week, to get, or like every 2 weeks, to get my hair done like once a month. And all of that's something that people don't see as essential spending. But for me, I want it to be an essential spending. Like, I want that to be a part of my lifestyle. And I think money is great with helping you like set a standard for your lifestyle to an extent. So I think I would like to maximize it in the future.
I'm going to add one more question.
Yeah.
Because it's so interesting and so fascinating. Are you religious, or is your family religious at all, or do you believe in a higher being?
That's an interesting question, actually. And I'm kind of not surprised that it came up. No, none of my family is religious. It's interesting because my dad is baptized, I think as a Christian, but honestly, I have no idea because he never goes to church. We don't pray in the family and stuff like that. My mom is Jewish. So she has, her dad is Jewish, so my granddad is Jewish. So we have a lot of Jewish blood in the family. Again, none of us explore it in a religious way. So it's more like an ethnicity more than a religious kind of belief. So I would say that religion in my family is really not like an aspect that anyone practices or anyone even thinks of on a day-to-day basis.
So you haven't really thought deeply?
No. Okay. I have a lot of friends who are religious. My best friend in university, she is a Christian and like really devout. So she is someone, she's someone who prays every day and stuff, and I really admire that. And I've been to church with her just to kind of be a company, but yeah, I myself don't think that religion is something that I necessarily need in my life. I feel like a lot of people come to a religion out of place of need or necessity to believe in something. For me, I think I'm so self-centered to an extent that being religious would be difficult.
Final question.
Yeah.
Is your message to the world, and I know you've listened to many episodes of the podcast, so you probably can see it coming, but what's one message, quote, or saying you wish every educator would promote and every kid would internalize?
I would probably say to explore themselves. Like, explore themselves and give themselves a chance to really look into things and delve into their personality traits that they don't think they can well, that they don't think they can immediately utilize, you know. So for example, with communication, with kind of outreach, with working with other people, that's not necessarily something that all people want to do, but I think that's something that is very useful, just to have that experience. So I would say experience things, go for it, explore yourself, explore your skill set, see what you come out with at the end.
That's wonderful, Lisa, but I just want to reiterate my gratitude for kind of the energy that you bring. Every time I see you, I think it's made my day better because of all the positivity that you radiate. And I think the attitude with which you approach your life and how you always go above and beyond, how responsive you are on social media, and just the entire presence that you have. And I'm amazed at your sense of learning, and I think that's the sense of curiosity, and that's the sense of initiative that I hope to further develop in myself as well. And it was particularly nice to interact with you at the union as well. I remember after I lost my campaign, you also sent me some very kind wishes of encouragement, which I really appreciated as well. I want to take this opportunity, but yeah, I'm really just grateful for your inspiration in that regard.
Thank you. I would say that you're the inspiring one out of the two of us. I talk about you in my family all the time. All the time. Like, David is that, David is this. Like, he's just so extra with everything that he does. Like, he's so good at everything that he does. So I would say that I'm actually trying to bounce off whatever you're doing and really pick up on kind of how you time manage and navigate the space. So thank you.
That's very kind, Lisa. Let's keep bouncing off each other.
Of course. Thank you very much.